Hello, good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. I'm Mary Beth Schnaber, Rev. I'm the CSBG State Assistance Director here with NASCAP, and we are so pleased to join you today on this joint webinar hosted in partnership between NASCAP, the Community Action Partnership, and the CCAP Commission to talk about how state offices and state associations can pursue and promote CCAP in their networks. Before we dive too deep, I do want to review a few housekeeping items for everyone. First off, we have some really great attendance on this webinar, so we will be keeping the lines muted, but feel free to put any questions or discussion items in the chat, and we'll put a message there to help you find it. Our webinar today is being recorded, and we'll make these slides and recording available later on this week. We have a really fantastic panel today, and it's made up of all levels of our network, which I think is so cool. We will introduce folks as we get to some of our smaller panel discussions, but at the top of the call, I want to acknowledge that we have CCAP legends with us, Charles McCann and Jim Lopresti. We're so grateful to them for joining and to have their expertise on the call with us. So just really quickly, I thought I'd orient us to kind of how we're going to structure our conversation today. Jeannie's going to kick us off with an overview of the Certified Community Action Professional credential. And then we'll have two panel discussions. We'll have one discussion that's about the value of CCAP and the role of state associations and state offices. And then we'll wrap up with how you can start or join a study group. We'll also review available supports and anything you need from us, any kind of needed supports that you may have. And then we'll move into next steps that you can do to support CCAP. So with that, I think I'm going to kick it over to you, Jeannie.
Thanks, Mary Beth. So I'm Jeannie Chaffin, and I've been a CCAP since 1995, and I'm thrilled to be on a call today with state folks, state associations, national leaders, because I've had the pleasure of working at all those levels. And so I really see the value in all the different roles in our network, and I'm really happy that we can talk about CCAP today across the different levels and roles in our network. So just a little bit, I'm going to go through really fast, but just in case you're new to the network or you've just not really stopped and really paid close attention to the Certified Community Action Professional credentialing program. It's the only national peer review based recognition of community action managers and leaders in our network. And it was actually developed in 1991 by the National Community Action Partnership under a different name at that time, but it was developed by community action leaders for community action leaders, but with advisement and counsel of individual, Dr. Marty Burns, who is a certification industry expert. So this wasn't just created in the network, it was really created with real expertise about what certification programs should include. And CCAP is overseen by a commission that's appointed by the partnership board chair. And we have several commissioners on the call today. You've heard Charles McCann is with us and other commissioners who will be introducing themselves shortly. All right, do I have control here? Can we even advance the slide? Thank you. We did a little bit of an analysis earlier in the year about the number of active CCAPs we have in the network. And although we've had over 1,000 folks over time get their CCAP, we estimate that we have about 746 active CCAPs, plus 63 who were in the 2020 class, just certified in July. And we actually have a few of those folks in that 2020 class with us today. So we have nearly 800, a little over 800 active CCAPs. And those folks are spread across 230 community action agencies. Now remember, we have about 1,000 community action agencies in the country. So we have a lot of community action agencies around the country where there is not a CCAP. We have 17 state associations, 3 CSBG state offices, and 3 national partners that have CCAPs. In 24 states, we have fewer than 10 CCAPs, so we have a lot of states where we could definitely use more CCAPs, and there are actually 8 states where we don't have any CCAPs, so we definitely love to see some CCAPs in those states. So who's eligible? Individuals who have held a leadership role for at least 2 years are qualified to begin their candidacy, and individuals employed by a qualifying organization. So all of you at state CSBG offices are at a qualified organization, the state association, the national association. So you have to be in a community action agency or part of the network to qualify. There really are 2 pillars to CCAP, and the first pillar is the body of knowledge, which is a 5-section list of knowledge and skills. And so on the next slide, I'll just quickly highlight those. You know, what's in the body of knowledge? It's the history of the community action movement, the vision and values of the community action movement, traditional management skills, leadership, and then theories of poverty. And these are really the areas that the original commission thought were important skills and knowledge areas for community action leaders. The next pillar is really about the ethics of community action, and there we're going to direct you to the CCAP website shortly, but there is a code of ethics that you have to sign on to and that we operate by, and that's really the second pillar of CCAP. And then the steps. Okay, so what does candidacy look like? So we're not going to go into great detail on this today, but just to give you some general overview, there's a CCAP brochure that you can take a look at. That's really the first step, and that's on the partnership website. Finding a mentor or perhaps even a study group to help you. You complete an enrollment form, and that's when you sign the code of ethics, and there is a fee. The next component is really completing the candidate data form, which takes a look at your skills and abilities and your training and your years, and puts that all down for the commission to look at, and that gets scored. Complete the executive skills portfolio, where you demonstrate a sample of your work and answer some questions about how it demonstrates your management or leadership skills and abilities, and then passing the written exam. And those last 3 things happen at specified times every year, and you can kind of see what the timeline is for the 2021 class. So why CCAP? So why have we assembled this illustrious group of people today to talk to states and state associations about CCAP? And really it's because of a couple of things. We know that in the network we are experiencing a generational shift. I mean, if you just look around community action agencies or your network in the state, you know, there are a lot of people in new leadership roles. And sort of preparing for that generational shift, CCAP can really help make sure that folks who are taking on leadership roles have certain knowledge, skills, and abilities, and have demonstrated that they have what it takes to be a certified community action professional. We also think it's really about investing in the community action movement's future, and that helps with quality and impact. Those of you that are CCAPs know that, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about this today, but it really can help you to be a better network member when you have this certification. And then let's face it, we are in a, you know, the weirdest time that, you know, we've ever experienced as a movement with the pandemic, teleworking, the load that's on community action people right now. And we know that people are getting a little crispy. I know I am. And in some ways you might say, well, why would I pursue CCAP, you know, when there's so many other things going on? But investing in yourself, in professional development, being in learning with other folks can be very rejuvenating. So we really think that now might be a great time for folks to think about CCAP if they haven't thought about it before. And maybe having an emphasis in a state on CCAP can help that state bounce forward and be stronger coming out of the pandemic. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you might focus on CCAP as a state office and a state association. So we have a panel who's going to share their thoughts with you about that. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just take a minute or two and tell a little bit about, the value of CCAP to them or to their organization. And then we're going to have a few panel questions. So we've got some time for this. So I'm going to start off with Denise Harlow. And as I said, give your name, how long you've been a CCAP, and sort of the value of CCAP to all these folks who've joined us today to sort of think about why. Denise.
Thanks, Jeannie. I've been lucky enough to be a CCAP since, I believe, 2009. I was saying earlier, my certificate's back at the office, so I can't know that for sure. But someone else was mentioning who signed their CCAP form, and they said Winston Ross. It was the power and influence of one of the executive directors in New York State at the time, where I was the state association director, who said, Denise, you really need to do this. As the state association ED, I'm like, well, I'm getting all my agencies. I want to get other folks engaged. And he says, no, you need to step up and take that leadership role as the executive director of the state association. We worked with our state office. We got resources put together to help a class in New York move forward. And all 6 of us are still in community action. So when you ask about the value, Jeannie, of the CCAP program, it changed my personal trajectory, my professional trajectory. And I have seen that happen for so many people. And I know we're going to talk about the value, for instance, at the national level. And I can't stress enough the value we see at the partnership when our state associations, our state offices, our local agencies have their CCAPs, the difference it makes when we bring together national thinking groups or organizing groups. You look around the room, many times the majority of folks in the room are CCAPs. They've been around a while, they understand, they're demonstrated leaders. So I know we'll get more into that, but I'm excited by today's conversation.
Thank you, Denise. Mary Beth.
Hi, folks. Mary Beth Schnaber Remrev. I've had my CCAP since my certificate is right beside me. I've had that since 2013, and a lot like Denise, I feel like CCAP really came at a professional crossroads for me. It reinvigorated my love and deepened my understanding of community action, and I think rooted me in this network and connected me in ways to other peers that I just couldn't have expected. It's like I came into a whole new family when I got my CCAP, and that was so special and wonderful. I'm really excited for us to talk about kind of the value at all of the levels, right? There's a value to you personally, but there's also a greater value to, your agency, your state network, and nationally. So I'm really excited for us to talk about that today.
Great, thanks, Mary Beth. Tom, introduce yourself, please, and answer the prompt. You may be muted, Tom. Okay, we'll come back in just a moment. Chris, can you share with us, please?
Sure. My name is Chris Shano. I'm from the Michigan CSBG State Office. I received my CCAP certification 3 years ago. It was a very rewarding experience, and it provided me with a strong foundation for why we do this work. We do this work to give low-income individuals and families a voice. We help open up opportunity. We empower people to be the change they want to see in their communities. And we share our heart and passion for people that need us to be there for them. The value of CCAP certification for the CAA network is a commitment to excellence. Excellence can be found at every level in the CAA network, from the local agency level to the state office. The CCAP certification is unique in that it shows leadership, knowledge, skill, passion, and commitment within the CAA network. We need CAA professionals that have strong understanding of our work to engage, support, and encourage people, partners, and each other. CCAP is a building block for strong, impactful programs, innovative approaches, and successful outcomes that meet our community's needs. The CCAP certification gives us, at the state office, assurance that the CAA network is striving for excellence in the community way, in the community action way. Our local CAAs with CCAP certified staff are more responsive, more engaged, and more likely to meet program performance and expenditure goals and always step up. The state office is a key part to the CAA network, and the CCAP ensures that we are doing our best. We learn from the past and the CSBG history, which is important to embrace when leading our current CSBG work. Michigan State Office has up to 4 CCAPs and 1 more on its way. So we're really doing well. The investment in your state staff development and knowledge of community action will help the CAA network meet needs of the low-income community, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic. The CCAP helps CAAs and the state office meet challenges together. The ability to work together established through the CCAP process and learning about the different roles and responsibilities each party of the CAA network plays. CCAP is of value to the state office, of value to the CAA, and of value to the people we serve. I would encourage you to invest in CCAP development of your staff, to open up new and improved ways of working and understanding the excellence of community action.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Leah, tell us your ideas here.
Hi everyone, Leah Paletti at Minnesota Community Action Partnership. I have been a CCAP since 2015. I was encouraged at the 50th anniversary conference when our friends in Missouri had 50 CCAPs in the 50th year. And I wanted Minnesota to be like that. I needed to know what it was that Minnesota needed to do to have 50 people walk across that stage. Talked to one of my colleagues in Missouri and they said, you have to contact Charles McCann. So I did, went through it. I think Arnie Anderson, who was the executive director, and I both went through it. We had 8 people that first year. Minnesota was one that we had, I think, 3 or 4 CCAPs in the state prior to this. It wasn't really anything that anyone talked about because there was nobody that championed the cause. Well, I went through the process and it became a passion project of mine. I just think that you learn so much about community action, about the movement. You get to know peers that you may never know. You can see a CCAP pin across the room of 1,000 people and go up and talk to them and have something in common. And I just think that the value is, there's no words to put to the value of that, building the stronger network. So that is my introduction, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, we'll hear more from you in a moment. Thank you, Leah.
You're welcome.
Tom, are you able to speak
Can
to
you
us
hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Tenorio, the CEO of the Community Action Agency of Butte County, Inc., up here in rural Northern California. Been a CCAP since 1993, the inaugural year of the program. And I had already been in community action for about 14 years prior to that, and saw people around me that I really respected and were inspired by. And so this just seemed like the next best move for me professionally. And I know that sometimes there's things made about the different generations, whether you're a millennial or a Gen Xer or other. And yet I think there's things that we share in common. We all get excited about, well, what's next for us? What's next for me? What's next for our organization? this was really the best step that I could have taken for me. Now, having worked in the field for 42 years now, and having been a CCAP for 27 of those years, I can really see tremendous value, of course, but not just for me, but for agencies. And because all of you are involved with agencies, from my vantage point, what I have been pleased to observe is that when you have CCAPs in agencies, they're generally more accountable, and they're better performing. If you look at the last 4 awards for excellence that the National Partnership has awarded, they've all had CCAPs in leadership positions. And then last but not least, agencies that have CCAPs in them are more invested in your state network, in making sure that the performance within the states are really amped up as much as possible. So whether you're looking for accountability, looking for better performing networks, or just something to really point to as an example for other organizations, by and large, CCAP-led agencies really can provide that to you. And so I would just really encourage your consideration for support of the program.
Thank you, Tom. That's some really good food for thought. I'm going to ask just a couple of quick questions, and then we're going to move to the second portion where we talk a little bit more about what states and state associations can actually do. But before we do that, I wondered, Denise, if you could talk a little bit, having your perch now at the national level, and then your perch when you were at the state association in New York, how CCAP created sort of an organizational culture or a common understanding, in a state or across the country? Does it matter that we all sort of have some common knowledge and skills? And what value do you see in that?
I can't stress the value of that connectedness enough. People often say, Denise, why don't people know community action? And we all know that agencies have different names, different logos within the branding, outside the branding, whether you call yourself Peace or whether you call yourself Schenectady Community Action Program, which is where I started my community action career. You're all part of the same family, and there's it's hard to necessarily tease that all together. But if you invest in CCAP, you are then grounded in the history, the purpose, the values of community action. You understand that it doesn't matter what your name is. It doesn't matter the logo that's on the front of your building. What matters is that you're a community action agency grounded in maximum feasible participation. And our mission and purpose is to end, fight the causes and conditions of poverty, that we go upstream, as Charles likes to call it, and keep the pond healthy. That's our job and that's our mission. And again, I go to some of that connectivity of individuals to a national network. So many folks don't know that they're part of 1,000 organizations that touch the lives of 15 million people every day or every year. CCAP is a way that ties us together. I love the way Leah framed it. You can see a CCAP pin across the room, you're racing across, and you're connected. I run into people all over this town in DC that have worked at some point in their career path. If you're in human services, odds are you probably worked at a CAP agency somewhere along the way. What I want to do is those folks who've now spent 20, 30 years helping people, I want to keep this generation of people invested in families in community action, because I believe that is the best model of changing the way our country operates, both at the family level, but also the community level.
Thank you, Denise. Chris, I wonder if you could talk for just a minute about, as a state director, and you've been a state director for a few years, if going through the CCAP program, the CCAP certification, and looking at that body of knowledge and reading and preparing for the exam, preparing your executive skills portfolio, did you learn things in that process that you didn't know that have helped you as a state director?
Yes, the process was a year-long process. It was pretty intense. You have to be very motivated. You have to be part of the study group to really engage with other community action professionals to learn about the history and where you came from. I think that helps to show where you're going, because we can build on the past and move forward. It helped me to understand the community action model and their the community action agency's ability to work with people in a community, mentor, walk alongside, and hear the voice of the people that we're helping, and pull that into, at the state office, new and more productive policies to make sure those things happen a lot easier and more streamlined. So this process is very important to state offices. It's very important to all levels of the state, as far as, you know, the different levels of roles and responsibilities, if it's a grant manager to a monitor, to understand. So yes, it was wonderful. It was great. We learned a lot, and I would say all states should do this.
Great, thanks, Chris. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary Beth, and she's going to facilitate a little bit of a deeper dive into what Minnesota, Indiana, and Michigan are doing to promote and pursue CCAP in their networks. So take it away, Mary Beth and team.
Awesome, thank you, Jeannie. So I will move us forward to talk about, you know, kind of once you understand this value, right, the value of CCAP, the value that it provides. You know, I always think about it as providing both value internally as well as externally, right? We just heard from Chris and Leah, you know, talk about how there's value for staff internally, right? That investment internally, your culture, embracing that culture, and then that value for your broader network, right? Kind of building your bench. So once you understand that value, what do you do about it, right? What can state offices and state associations do from that, from their unique role to support CCAP within our network? So we have a fantastic panel to talk about this today. So I wonder, Leah, why don't we start with you, and maybe you can tell us how associations specifically can support CCAP.
So one thing that we do is we start our recruitment in June. So we have a Community Action Leadership Institute, which is kind of for frontline workers that are fairly new to community action, but probably within a year, 2 years into community action. And once they graduate that program, at the last session, we like to talk to them about CCAP, because then that is their next obvious leadership development opportunity that they have that we provide. So once we get them, probably late summer, late summer, then I send out information about, we are recruiting for a study group. We have Charles come and do the study group in person. Obviously this past year, most of it was done virtually, which worked great. But we also have a really great relationship with our state office, who do understand the value of CCAP. Our OEO director is a CCAP. One of her staff is a CCAP. I have another of her staff going through this upcoming year, so that's awesome. But they really understand that, you know, it's not just saying go do your CCAP. When we are in person, they provide the meals for our study groups. You know, typically a lot of states do not. You brown bag it when you come to the study groups. Another thing that our state office does is we bundle our enrollments. So an organization would maybe pay more than an association would, just because we bundle them. So we get a discount for the more people that we enroll. And I think that OEO has provided support for that for about the last 4 or 5 years. And every year that we have provided that resource, we've paid for every CCAP enrollee that wanted to go through. So that's really exciting, and something that their agency doesn't have to think about, you know, if they don't have it in their budgets or whatever the case. Yeah, and I think that's about all I have on that.
Thanks, Leah. So I wonder, in Indiana, we have another great example of that state and association partnership, much like Minnesota just talked about. And we have both the state association and the state office on from Indiana. So Ed, I wonder if we start with you to kind of talk about how Indiana has structured your partnership with your state office, and also how you've worked to ultimately support CCAP in your broader network and the value that you've seen from that.
Okay, well, thank you. Start with Jeannie. That picture right behind your head is right beside me here. So of the poster behind you, the 35 years, it's a nice poster. And I've had it framed here since 99, I guess. My CCAP was 2011, I think. When we were all doing that, I had to go up and find my certificate and say, oh, there it is. And the association has been involved since 91. So when the first CCAP test was designed, our executive director and our board president participated in that and provided feedback on the design and the content of the test. So they were sort of subject matter people, and we've been involved more or less since. We've promoted, I did my CCAP, as about a third of my board was going through the process, and I thought, I probably need to do this. And we had some staff here who were going through it too. And I wasn't able to attend all of Charles's sessions, but I did attend most of them, and got scared that I might not pass the test. I'm a very slow reader, but I spent about 3 days before the test just reading. So, and somehow I made it through. Now, I truly believe we will never be as good as Minnesota, but we really want to make Indiana the better Indiana. So Amy Carter from the staff here at the association has been managing the CCAP recruitment and training process. So Amy?
Thanks, Ed. I'm Amy Carter, the network training manager here at INCA. I've been a CCAP for 47 days. And CCAP made me fall even more in love with community action, realizing that it is a movement and that it has a lot of power. So in my 3 years here, I have worked with our state office to have training funds dedicated to CCAP so that we could host Charles and his training. And so they have been very supportive of INCA gathering those classes of people. And it's just been nice to be able to have Charles and to have a study group each year so that we can learn from each other as we go through the process. And Steve St. John is our CCAP from our state office. And I don't know if you wanted to go to that, Mary Beth, but he is a new CCAP too, and can tell you about how much it matters at the state level.
Thanks, Amy. Ed and Amy have kind of talked about what we do at the state level as far as providing the funding. But I think really what's important is kind of understand why we do that from a state perspective. And you know, you can give money to a situation, but we have other responsibilities as a state. And one of our first and our primary goals is to serve the citizens of Indiana. And what we have found is that through capacity building and utilizing the CCAP training program, it allows us to develop a highly skilled workforce within community action. And we feel that that's an investment in building stronger agencies. And you know, when you look at customer service, community action is on the front lines of service delivery. So the stronger we can build our foundation and our base, the better we're going to be able as a state to meet our objectives in assisting citizens. I personally, as I went through the program, have found that the CCAP is kind of like a master's class in community action. There are so many facets to it, but it gives you so much depth and information about where you were, where you're going. My responsibilities at the state are compliance monitoring. So we're an odd bunch. We look at the world a little differently than everybody else. But one of the things that stuck out at me as we were going through the training program was the second pillar, the code of ethics. And I mean, I review a lot of meeting minutes from community action agencies, and they're always citing the promise, but nobody really talks about the heart, which is the ethics. And if you use those as your guiding principles, it can redefine how you run your agency. So I personally have got a lot out of it. But as a state, we also, again, look at why are we doing this? And again, from that monitoring standpoint, if we do this right and we build up our base, then hopefully we have fewer compliance issues. And that means that's less time for the agency to work on correcting issues, less time for us as a state to oversee it. And we can really get at the heart of why we're here and really look at long-term initiatives and start changing our mindset a little bit. So kind of wraps up the state perspective, at least in Indiana.
Thanks, Steve. You made such an awesome point there about the ethical piece of CCAP. And that's a point I really do want to drive home, is that another reason why CCAP, I think, is important in a moment like this is so many of us are faced with really tough decisions, and it can feel like there is no right one. I see CCAP as really helping us to make sound ethical decisions in tough times. That's something I think is really critical in a moment like this for our leaders. So, Chris, I wonder, we had a conversation the other night about kind of how Michigan approaches the support of CCAPs and what Michigan does. I wonder if you'll share a little bit about that.
Sure. To piggyback a little bit on the ethical side of CCAP, what I find really interesting is in Michigan, we've seen a lot of turnover of executive directors. A lot of our long-standing executive directors have retired. So we have 28 community action agencies, and we have a lot of new directors, and it's from the past maybe 3 to 4 years. And with CCAP, if they are CCAP, they have the ethical component in their work style, and they're leaders that can work within a community action agency, and the trickle down helps others to carry that same kind of ethical and the values and vision that we see for community action, and it trickles throughout the community action agency, and they run a little bit better, a little stronger. They stand up to things that maybe other nonprofits would shy away, and we call that community action. We've got community action in our communities. In Michigan, we work really hard to ensure that we have as many CCAPs as we can. Charles has helped us with so many different study groups throughout the years, and we really appreciate him. We love it when he comes to Michigan. We work with our state association. It's very similar to Minnesota. We start in the summer with our leadership group that is graduating, and we encourage them to become CCAPs at the next level. And then when they start their study groups, they work really hard. I was part of a study group, and I tried really hard to get to all of the classes. But what Charles does is he keeps us on track. He has a schedule. He has the books and the reading materials that comes from the leaders in the CCAP program to share with us what we need to do and learn to be successful leaders. So we work really hard to encourage everybody to participate. The other things that I do is we look for leaders, and if they want to become part of CCAP, I will write recommendations for them. And so that connection to the state office and me being a CCAP is really important. I get to know people in the community action agencies and the field and help them grow their leadership skills as well.
Thanks, Chris. I think, Chris, both you and really Amy and Steve, we've also talked about how going through the study group with your peers and with your agencies is really a cool process. It kind of deepens your connection to one another. I wonder if you might say a couple of words about that process and what you got out of it.
Yeah, I can go first. I've been in community action for 3.5 years, and I've been at the association the whole time. So I appreciate having people from agencies in my CCAP class because, as you all know, that's a completely different perspective, and they teach me a lot about the ethics. They teach me a lot about what community action is doing, and it's also just fun to be able to email them and say, how's your studying going? Or congratulations on passing, or, you know, just that connection and the community that it fosters.
Well, I can say for me, I mean, because I interact with agencies a little differently than most. So this gave me an opportunity to really kind of bond with my classmates. And it was nice to have the readings, but then to be able to sit around the table and kind of talk about what they mean. And actually, one of the greatest joys I've had, and everybody's mentioned his name quite a lot, is having Charles come and do their sessions, but was getting to meet Charles and kind of hear about the history of why things occurred and how we got to this point, and him leading our discussions along with the rest of our, you know, classmates was kind of, it was very enjoyable for me.
One other thing we do in Indiana is we tend to celebrate CCAPs, so that our tradition is that on the Tuesday night before the Community Action Partnership National Conference, we have an Indiana dinner, and we invited Leah one year, and she was mean to us, but you know, other than that, we were okay. But Charles and his wife join us, and we celebrate the CCAPs for the year, and that's also part of recruiting for the next group. So you know, we not only celebrate those that just got their CCAPs, we celebrate the other people in the dining room who are CCAPs. So you know, we try to celebrate, try to make a deal of it. We're since there was no conferences, we're trying to do something in December with Charles to celebrate the 5 CCAPs from Indiana this year. But I'm not sure we'll be able to do that in person either on December. So, but don't forget to celebrate that success.
And
I think that's such a critical point. Yeah, Leah, I'm actually going to go to you because I think you're another state who does a great job of celebrating. I don't know if I've heard anyone as enthusiastic when their peers go across the stage than you, Leah.
Yeah, I love it. So one thing that we do at our annual conference too, we do something similar that we do at the national conference. So we are able to recognize all the CCAPs in the room, and then specifically the folks that are receiving their CCAP that year. And then, you know, as you all know, there's really nothing that we can do or give them other than praise, but we do a small token. You know, they get this nice little CCAP jacket, and then it's amazing how proud they are to wear this jacket. Or, you know, that's, yes, they get the certificate, but they get that jacket, and they're pretty excited about that. And one of the other things that we implemented this past year were mentors. We'd never done this before, but I had a lot of CCAPs that wanted to do something, and there really wasn't anything that we provided for them to continue being part of the CCAP program in Minnesota. So I lined up a mentor for every new enrollee, and they had communication on a very regular basis. So rather than folks always coming to me, they could go to their mentor and ask, you know, how do I fill this out? Or, you know what, I think I'm gonna quit. You know, we can talk them off the ledge or answer any questions. And that was really, really helpful. And all of my mentors from last year wanna come back and do it again because they were able to continue to be a part of CCAP.
That's awesome.
can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the people that went through the study group and celebrated their CCAP and passing the test. But what happens after CCAP graduation and celebration is that there's still this energy, and there's this personal motivation to get out there and be a mentor. In our state, what we're seeing is that those are the people that engage in conversations, in other work groups, and other task force, and not only in the state level, but the national level. And that really moves the whole community action agency network for a state forward. It's very progressive. It's meeting the needs at the level that is really required for community action. So it's just a springboard into some really great things.
Thank you. On that note, I think I'm actually going to move us forward to talk about, just to wrap up this conversation. Thank you to our fantastic panelists. Couldn't have said it better than any of you. So just to kind of wrap up a couple of quick ideas on how state offices and associations can support. We know that you can collaborate on a study group. You can sponsor those fees for your local agencies. You can also write letters of support. You can also reach out to emerging leaders, right? We heard that from Denise, right? You can reach out to those emerging leaders and tell them you see something in them and that they should pursue their CCAP. So big and small, all of these actions, they bring us to this idea that we should intentionally coordinate and focus on our why, right? We kind of heard that from Ed, and on our community action history and our understanding of poverty, all of that. So there are so many things that you can do to approach this intentionally. So you can ensure that you've got our history, vision, and values of leadership built into your state TNTA plan, for instance, right? We know that that's a place where state offices and state associations naturally coordinate. So do you have those elements built into your plan? You could also do an analysis and review how many CAAs in your state have no CCAPs, right? You could also consider, could you make some special efforts to recruit candidates from those agencies and do something to support them? And to Leah's point, could the CCAPs in your state perhaps help with that effort, to kind of help plug them into that larger effort? So part of CCAP really is this idea of supporting candidates, and then ultimately, as you heard from everyone on the call, celebrating CCAP in your larger network. So while you're considering what you can do to build CCAP intentionally in your state, do consider hosting a study group. There are a number of groups already slated to begin, as you can see on the screen. Most of these are supported by the man, the myth, the legend, Charles McCann. If you have enough folks in your state or even your region who are interested, we can add other states to this list. We can also help you figure out how to get that study group just started and supported. I do also want to make a special call out to, we have this national study group as well. So don't feel held back if you only have maybe a few folks in your state who can commit right now. We do have a national group as well that you can plug into. I did see a question in the chat about how soon do we have to commit to a study group, kind of what is the timeline? And I think typically, and Charles and Jeannie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, usually we want to get these study groups up and running kind of in the fall, right? So we can give folks some time to get ready to submit all of their CDF and their enrollment form. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's right. The fall is good. The first deadline is the candidate data form in the middle of January. And followed very soon after by the portfolio, the third Wednesday in February. And by starting in the fall, you really have enough time to get those things finished. You have enough time to do it. But you also have the opportunity then to begin studying for the exam in January and give 6 months for the exam study. So it would have to be done before the first deadline, certainly. But best done in the fall.
And there is another question in the chat about if there isn't a lot of CCAPs in the state, could we join another study group? And you know, I think that there's a few options there, right? You can join the national, you can look at joining another state study group in some cases.
That's right.
Go ahead, Charles.
I think that's right. The national study group started as a place where candidates who are too scattered around the country, in distances too far away, in numbers too few to have their own study group, then join the national study group. And this year the national study group bonded as well, so it works. So that would be a place. If there are some core, 3, 4, 5 people perhaps in the state, there is the opportunity to, particularly if we're going to do Zoom meetings in the fall, I'm going to do Zoom meetings in the fall, to join another study group in another state. The starting point would be how many, who are they, and then what would be, and then some discussion about what would be the best option in that state.
Perfect. Thank you, Charles. So with that, I think I want to pass it over to Katie and our team to talk about what we can do to help.
Sure. Thank you, Mary Beth. This is a great conversation, so thank you, everyone. As you all have mentioned, there are many benefits to obtaining your CCAP as a state office or a state association. And I'll speak for the partnership, but NASCAP and the partnership are both here to help you with whatever you need. Maybe it's that second or third set of eyes on your ESP or your candidate data form, or simply helping to orient you to the process. I was in Amy Carter's class and just got my CCAP 47 days ago as well. And I can tell you firsthand that there were several times where I would just pick up the phone and call Mary Beth and say, walk me through this. What do I need to do here? How do I fill this out? What type of information is the best to be putting on this form or in this ESP? And how do I reference certain things? So it's really nice to have that partner in crime with you as you go through this process, and just, you know, somebody to bounce ideas off of. So we are here to support you as state offices and state associations for whatever you might need in this process. And I think everyone on this call is here to support you as well. So just reach out to us. I'm going to kick it back to Mary Beth. I think you might be on mute.
Jeannie, did you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I think we just have and I'll just ask you, Mary Beth, to look at any final questions and interrupt me if there are any more that pop up. But a lot, you know, all of the materials are on the Community Action Partnership website, and you just go to the CCAP tab, and there's a brochure, this little snapshot from the brochure. There's the body of knowledge, the instructions for the executive skills portfolio, the candidate data form. You can look at all that and kind of see what it might mean. I did want to emphasize here that, you know, you have 3 years to get your certification when you start. We talk about a yearly calendar, but, you know, folks can start anytime, and they have 3 years to get each of the steps done. And so, you know, starting doesn't mean you're going to finish, you know, in that first year necessarily. People like to do that sometimes, but you don't have to. So it is a 3-year process. We really do, as Mary Beth and Katie and Denise and everybody have shared today, you know, the national associations want to be supportive. It's always good to have a mentor who's sort of in a similar situation. If you're a state association, finding a mentor that's a state association, or if you're a finance director, finding somebody who's got their CCAP that's a finance director, and, you know, we can help connect folks to that process. If you're interested in joining one of the study groups that was listed on the previous slide, you can reach out. I think our contact information is on the next slide. Oh, there's a picture of the 2019 CCAPs. And so that's at the annual convention in Chicago. All those folks had walked across the stage at the gala and gotten their certification. There's all the commissioners there at the front. So we'll get back to that regular order at some point for sure. And it is a great evening, as Leah has said. So if you want more information about setting up a study group and building that in your state, the state association and the state decide they want to come together and host a study group, you can reach out to Mary Beth, myself, Commissioner McCann, or Jim LaPresti, who's our consultant to the commission. And if you want to talk about joining a neighboring states group, because maybe you just have one or two people, reach out to any of us and we'll help you navigate that. So there's no reason not to get the support that you need to do this. There's lots of support. Part of CCAP is bringing other folks along. So any CCAP will be happy to do that. So Denise or Janae, do you have any final comments that you want to make before we close out?
The only thing that I would say is you see the passion of everyone on the screen here, and this is just one subset. My guess is if we gathered another 15 or so CCAPs from around the country, you would hear very similar stories. As state offices and state associations, you are uniquely positioned with different kinds of capacity than local agencies have to be a convener. And a convening role is a critical element of CSBG, of Community Action's history. And in this way, by convening your colleagues from around your state, you can affect change to take decades and will have an impact for years. Getting a younger professional their CCAP, if they stay in community action for 30, 40 years of their career, that investment of time and resources will pay dividends beyond dividends. So thank you for being and listening to today's session, and whatever we can do at the partnership to help you, let us know.
And I just want to say from NASCAP's perspective, you see that we have our full force. We have Mary Beth and we have Katie who are CCAP. I will be going through the CCAP process. I started it, and so I have to restart it, but it is something that is incredibly valuable. And we are really talking with all of our state members on the line, and we wanted to talk and share with what Chris and Steve and others have been able to do, because it really does help you get connected. And it's a badge that you wear in honor. And it is a group, as Mary Beth said, that becomes a second family. And in these times where we're all so separated, we can use that extra boost. And as Jeannie says, it is a lot of work, but it is something that refreshes you and reminds you as to why we're doing this and why we're all supporting each other.
Thank you, Janae. Thanks to everybody. And I'll just hand it back to Mary Beth.
We don't have any other questions that have come in. So with that, we're right at the top of the hour. As you've heard, please do reach out. We're here to help. Thank you all so much for your time this afternoon, and we'll look forward to cheering you on when you get your CCAP, hopefully next year. Thank you guys so much.